What do you think it is about porn and masturbation that made you timid from being such a confident guy?
I mean, where do I start? It's one of them things that all guys know is bad. You don't have to be, like, I think there was a study that showed that regardless of even people, like regardless of their religious beliefs, they feel a sense of shame after viewing adult content. So that's really what's happening. You know, you're doing an act. It's taking you to quite a low state, like a low frequency, and then you're carrying that energy into your day-to-day life. Not only that, you're depleted essentially. Like, you know, we all kind of know, we've all heard of, obviously there's a whole no-fat movement, but there's also like semen retention, you know, so it's retaining that kind of vitality in you. So if you're always releasing that, you are losing like your essence, you're losing your vitality. So you don't have that same kind of energy and that kind of aura about yourself. So there's a kind of a whole spiritual side to it as well. But yeah, I mean, you don't need to be a genius to work out. You know, I think most guys know, like from an internal state, man, like they do the act and they feel low, they feel down. They don't feel like they want to go and conquer the world. They don't feel like they want to go out and meet a bunch of people. They just want to shut themselves down and probably give into more bad habits, you know, probably do more other things. And it's like this vicious cycle you get into. And a lot of guys stay in that cycle for a long time, you know, in their life. So to kind of answer your question there.
It's interesting that you bring up the whole religion thing. And I think that's such a great insight that regardless of if you're Christian or if you're atheist or whatever your beliefs are, you have this inherent knowledge that what you're doing doesn't feel right and maybe isn't right. And I guess what I want to ask is, do you think that this major availability of porn in society now with social media, you know, you can't scroll 2 seconds on Twitter without seeing some girl advertising her OnlyFans with her baps out.
Yeah, it's true.
Do you think that hookup culture and the sort of modern dating scene has been affected badly by men having too much access to porn?
Yeah, a lot of these guys that watch porn, they don't actually have a desire to go and meet women because they've spent all their energy and they're depleted and their whole body doesn't really even have the drive to go out and meet a woman. You know, when you do semen retention or nofap, all of a sudden you have this desire to want to go out and meet women, or you even have where you didn't have the courage before. Now you do have the courage to go and talk to her. You know, I see a lot with my clients, like I see it time and time again. They'll do this, they'll finally succeed, they get like to 6 months. And then just suddenly that girl who never liked them suddenly does, or some girl comes into the picture and they jump on it straight away, you know? So I think it does affect dating. I also think too, we do live in a very hypersexualized society. I mean, look at, you know, I see these like events, boxing events and stuff, and it's promoted by OnlyFans. And I'm like, really, our society's really got to that point where it's so acceptable, you know, it's so like, okay, that the OnlyFans is a sponsor, you know? It's like, to me, that blows my mind, you know, because I just think, what are we saying to our younger generation? Well, it's okay. This is just normal. Like, put that next to, I don't know, a drink company or something else. It's like, it's not making sense for me, you know? So I think we've deterred away from real life connection, you know, real deep like relationships, and we're more focused on pleasure seeking, right? So when it ties into hookup culture, it's like people are purely having sex just purely for the sake of gratifying one another rather than actually building a bond, which I think is in the long run kind of damaging, not just for society, but, you know, on a personal level. As a guy, I speak to a lot of guys that do, or maybe in the past had a phase where they slept with a lot of girls, and they'll tell me, oh, you know, like, yeah, okay, I got with her, but like I actually felt empty, or I felt like there was a void inside of me, which I find really interesting, you know? So it's a sign that there's something missing, you know?
Yeah, and it's promoted as the way to go about things is online dating apps, and they're going to make you happy. But you see, I love quoting this stat that in 2018, the number of sexless men had tripled in the last decade, and that was pre-pandemic. So I can only imagine that, you know, 28% of men in 2018 hadn't had sex in the last year. Now it's probably up to half. It's half of the guys you see walking down the street haven't gotten laid in the last year. And I'm not saying that sex is the ultimate representation of success with women, but it shows that availability of men and women even talking to each other, because one thing leads to another, is decreasing in my eyes.
Yeah, well, those men that aren't doing it, what are they doing? You know, are they sat there a monk, focused, building a business, probably a very, very, very small proportion. Most of them probably are at home pulling up whatever, Pornhub, OnlyFans, whatever. And that's where they're sort of satisfying themselves. So they don't really have an inclination to go and meet a girl because they're getting so much stimulation from, all these different websites and whatever. So yeah.
You've touched on it a little bit already, but something I did want to ask you was the desire for watching porn and faffing. That word is so funny to me, but
I mean, I don't really say that, but yeah.
Yeah.
You can say it. It's all good.
Choking the chicken. How much of it do you think is just from our biology, and how much of it, as you've already alluded to, is from the mainstream media, and not even mainstream, but just social media?
Yeah. Just like anything, people that smoke, they didn't come out of the womb wanting to smoke. One day someone introduced a cigarette to them and they were, oh, okay, well, this is what everyone else is doing, so let me try it. Then they started smoking. Then the nicotine got into their system, and then they had an addiction, right? And it's something they can't break. And I think porn is exactly the same. Most guys would agree that they didn't just, I mean, maybe there's a rare case of someone stumbling on it by themselves, but it's always something from the external introducing it to them. Then they get hooked. And then it's because society, as you said, society normalizes it. It's, when you're younger, it's like, oh, you don't watch porn, you must be gay or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, how do you know it's actually good for you? Like, it's kind of, if you don't do it, you're kind of looked at as weak. So
this might sound really odd, especially to anyone that's from an older generation watching or listening to this. And that's that I remember being in secondary school and your status was almost linked to how much porn and weird shit you could quote and watch and describe. And I guess it's part of the whole locker room talk thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that existed before porn too, but in a different form. But I remember being in the PE changing rooms or whatever, and people just seeing who had watched the most porn and said the most disgusting shit. So I think you're completely right that it's been normalized. And actually, if anything, you're incentivized culturally and societally to watch more porn and not be this weirdo that hasn't explored.
But like with anything in life, it's cool to play video games when you're 14. It's cool to smoke weed when you're 15, 16. It's cool to drink, but it gets to a certain point in life where it's not cool anymore. When you're 35 and you're still in your bedroom playing Call of Duty, or you're 28 and you still get high every single day. There's a certain point in life where you got to put the toys back in the box, basically. And I think, okay, yeah, we get introduced to porn, and like, you got to be a realist in life. Everyone's got a natural curiosity, but you have to really ask yourself, what is it costing me to consume these things? And I believe that, for every man, they should, I would encourage them to go through a period of time, whether that be a year, maybe 2, of focusing on getting that out of their life, because what you'll realize is once you do go through that 1-2 year phase or whatever it is, I mean, you can do it way faster, but if you want to do it on your own, for example, it's going to take some time, but you will get to a point where you realize you never even needed it in the first place. You kind of go full circle. You come back to when, before you were even introduced to it, you realize that, oh, I never needed this. Just the same way someone quits smoking. They realize, oh man, that was, I think a lot of people think that, oh, if I give this up, it's like an addiction I have to fight every single day. Like, no, not in the slightest. Once you give this up, it's not about like suppressing the desire, it's about transcending it. But there's a difference. You actually become like a different person. And as a result, you no longer desire the need to watch porn, because that's just filling some kind of void in your life. For a lot of guys, they're just looking at this stuff because it's pleasurable. The saying is like, a man who has no purpose seeks his purpose through pleasure, right? So it's like, or it's a form of coping. It's a way to kind of numb themselves out of their reality. Because, talk about stats like, watching adult content, the dopamine, it's like they say it's 150 picograms per deciliter of dopamine you're getting hit. Cocaine is like 450, but like the normal range is like anything between 0 and 30.
Wow.
So it's like, it is essentially a drug, and that's a drug you can have on tap again and again and again. And like, if you can do that and you just keep pressing that button, essentially what happens is your dopamine receptors get overstimulated and they start to downregulate to basically accommodate all the dopamine that's coming in. And that then makes your life, everything gets downregulated. So all the basic stuff you enjoyed, like music and playing football or talking to a friend, all those things no longer stimulate. The only thing that does is the quote unquote drug, that button. But when you give that up, obviously it gives your brain a chance to actually recover. And all of a sudden you start to notice like things are more enjoyable again. You start to enjoy the little things. You start to enjoy conversations with people, or going for a walk, or playing music. You know what I mean? So yeah.